Hello readers, here today to bring you my March wrap-up. My goals for this year are one nonfiction, one novella, one Margaret Atwood, and one classic per month, as well as 6 big books throughout this whole year, which I can kind of divvy up as I please. I managed to read 13 books this month, and considering that I started college in March and that the world pretty much ended, and I got really stressed out and couldn't concentrate on anything, I am so proud of that 13. Most of that was within the first 2 weeks of the month. Did quite a bit of reading in Mexico for my Mexico trip, and then after that I've read like maybe 10 pages a day. It's been a rough month for everybody, but still have a lot to be proud of this month. So starting off with The Gracie Er by Kim Liggett. This is a YA dystopia following a bunch of girls who've just reached the age of 16 and they're being sent off into the woods to get rid of their magics that they've supposedly stored up. I have a lot of thoughts on this. I have a review linked up in the corner. Go and watch it and then go and read this book. Actually, you should probably read the book first before you watch it, I guess, because that's how reviews work. Next up was my one buddy read that I finished this month, and that is Shutter Island by Dennis Lehane. I read this with Rachel Ray. I think we both kind of had the same thoughts on it. Like, it was an interesting enough plot, but the book was so slow that it didn't capture me. I wasn't that interested in it. I did know how this book would end because I've looked up the plot before. I have not actually watched the movie yet, but I was curious about it and I looked up the plot, and then eventually I came across this book and it's like, hey, I'll read it. It really wasn't that interesting. The writing, not even the writing, but just the pacing was so sluggish that he really kind of ruined his own book for me. Next up was The Little Prince. This was my classic for the month, and I also counted it as one of my novellas. It's a small children's book, but it has enough writing in it that, and it comes up as a novella. Anyways, I don't know why I'm defending myself to you. I read The Little Prince. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it, and it just kind of reconfirmed for me that I'm really not into French authors. Granted, I think this is only the 3rd or 4th French author that I have read, but I just haven't liked any of them. I don't know if it's a thing with French literature or if I'm picking the wrong authors, but it just didn't work for me. Then we have Mem, which the beginning of this month really did not go well. Mem I picked up at a local bookstore, and it is a speculative fiction where people take a traumatic memory out of themselves and place it into a clone of themselves, and that clone essentially relives the memory over and over again, and people hang on to them in like this memory holding institution, or sometimes they'll like bring them around with them to parties and stuff, and the concept was really interesting. The main character in this book is the only memory clone who can have thoughts and memories outside of the memory that she had placed in her, but I wasn't really sure what point the author was trying to get across. In speculative fiction, at least in this case, it was like literary fiction with a sci-fi focus, and I just didn't get it. So not my favorite read of the month by any means. Next book that I read was the 4th book in the Wayward Children series, also counting towards my novella goal, and that was In an Absent Dream. This follows one of the characters from the first book and the world that she was brought into. The Wayward Children series is a portal fantasy, so you're following these different characters as they go into different worlds through doors. I liked it. It wasn't my favorite book in the series, but I enjoyed it. I thought the world was cool. It was one of those that should have been a little longer and also should have cut some things, but it was fun. Next book was for the What the Book Club read with Victoria from What Victoria Read, and that was Lady Oracle. This is March's book for the month, and it's been my favorite so far. Well, no. I guess I think I actually liked Edible Woman a little bit better. This book I was really kind of back and forth on. I talk about this more in my Mexico vlog, which I will also link up in the corner, but I really enjoyed Margaret Atwood's writing in this one. I enjoyed the life story of the main character that we're following. I do think like a quarter of this could have been cut. It was keeping my interest up until I was 3/4 of the way through the book, and by that time I'm just like, is this story gonna end soon? But she had some really awesome things to say about women and our roles and how we're viewed by society, and really enjoyed that. Next up is Slay. This is about a video game designer, or developer. I don't know if there's a difference. Sorry. And there's a murder committed over her game, which is just for black people because she wants to build a safe space for them, and it's looking at her in her high school and like her future dreams that she wants to meet, and like just the people she's hanging out with and how this video game murder has affected her. It was really enjoyable. It's definitely too young for me as far as writing. It's like fairly young YA writing style, which isn't really something that I go for, but the story was amazing. I had so much to learn from this book. Again, this is going to be in my Mexico vacation vlog. Then I read Us Against You. This is the second book in the Beartown series. I think eventually it's going to be a trilogy by Frederick Bachman. I did really enjoy this. I do think that he was trying to do too much with this one. So with Beartown, you're following a rape of the hockey team general manager's daughter by the hockey team star player, and seeing people's lives around that event and where they fit in the town, and I think that was done really, really well. I still really enjoyed Us Against You, but with all of the character plot lines and all of the messages that he was trying to get across, the main plot just wasn't as strong for Us Against You. And with all of the messages, it felt like he was trying to do way too much. So it was still really enjoyable, but I definitely liked Beartown better. Us Against You was still 4 stars for me, though. So by no means is it a terrible book. I just think he was trying to go a little too far with it. Then I read Normal People. This one, I'm still not even sure what I think of it. This is like Little Prince for me, where Little Prince confirmed my dislike of French authors. Normal People confirmed my love of Irish authors. I will say I didn't love the story. Like, for me, this plot was nothing. There was no plot whatsoever. I didn't particularly like the characters. The whole book is a bad communication trope. But Sally Rooney's writing was so thrilling and beautiful, and I just really loved her style of storytelling. Totally made the book for me. And it was one of those, I'm very centered on writing style. I have to like the writing style to like the book, to read the book, to finish the book. And that pretty much, it was so good that it didn't really matter that there wasn't a plot line. If that makes any sense whatsoever. Next book that I read was My Dark Vanessa. I am going to have a review up for this soon. It was amazing. I loved it. This is about a girl who has a relationship with her teacher starting in the year 2000, and then we go to the future in 2017, where the teacher is accused of sexual assault by a student, and she's kind of figuring out her feelings around the whole thing. It's not a nice story. I can see why it's getting like a lot of a negative attention from the media for the way the story goes and the way that the book ends. But I also feel that that is very unfair to the book and unfair to sexual assault survivors in general. This is a fiction. The author has not confirmed whether anything actually happened to her, which it's none of our business to ask. But I like what it did. I like that it took some unpopular paths, because not everyone's sexual assault story is the same. Not everyone feels comfortable coming out. Not everyone understands their feelings around the event. And I just think this book did a really great job of exploring that. When my review is up, I'll go ahead and link it in the corner here as well. I followed that up with Break Your Glass Slippers. This is the newest poetry book by Amanda Lovelace. Hello. This is the newest poetry book by Amanda Lovelace. In her Women Are Magic series was the first one that she did, that started with The Princess Saves Herself in this one. This one is the You Are Your Own fairy tale series. So this book is focusing a little more on the Cinderella fairy tale. For those who break glass slippers as well as glass ceilings. So I really love that dedication. It was some great poetry to read when I was in the middle of like my second week quarantine brain fog. Something short and easily digestible, and I really love this start to this series. Amanda Lovelace, I'm a huge fan. If you like Rupi Kaur, I think you would like Amanda Lovelace. That'll give you an idea of like the style of poetry that she does. Really enjoyed that one. Then I read The Yellow Wallpaper and Other Stories. I was planning on just reading The Yellow Wallpaper, and I ended up reading the other stories as well. This was by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. I think she's really underrated. She's a classic author. One of those who's kind of ahead of her time with her feminism. She's really exploring women's roles in society and in marriage, and kind of having a social commentary on that. I really enjoyed it. I want to read more from her. I want to learn more about her. Like, I would totally pick up a couple of biographies on this woman and just inhale them immediately. I thought it was amazing. I'm not a huge short story reader in general, at least when it comes to short story collections, because usually they're kind of all over the place in their quality. But I've read some really great short story collections lately. I think one thing with me, or with anyone really in March, is I've been so stressed out that I cannot concentrate on anything. So starting to dive into short stories is just, it's something that is short. You can read it from beginning to end in less than an hour. You don't really have to dedicate yourself to a big book. And short stories are just really, they're really helping me right now, because I can still enjoy reading without having to sit there for hours on end just to get a couple of chapters into it. Last book of the month. I have a lot to say on this one. I am going to do an individual review for this. I did not finish it in March. However, I am counting it as my nonfiction for March. I really loved it. The writing was phenomenal. The story was phenomenal. This Chanel Miller is the victim of Brock Turner. Know My Name is a brilliant title. When you learn the story behind the cover, it's brilliant. It's inspired by Japanese artwork. I loved every moment of this. However, I tried to read it all at once, and that was around the time that COVID was really hitting. So you've got this emotional turmoil in real life, and you have this emotional turmoil of a book that actually happened, and you're following Chanel through all of her emotions and all of the court stuff. And I did make it to the last chapter, but I didn't read the last chapter, and I didn't read her victim statement. Sorry for the background noise, I have the window open. I didn't read the last chapter or the victim statement. By the time I got to the last chapter, I was exhausted with the story emotionally. The chapter before the last one, the second to last chapter, it was also kind of like wrapping everything up. I knew I didn't have the energy to read the victim statement. And by the time April started, I only read like a couple more pages in April. So I am counting this for March. I read 95% of it in March. I did my best with it. I really loved it. I just didn't have the emotional energy, so stopping this book was definitely a self-care move for me, but I'm cheating this month, and I'm counting it for March. It counts. Don't argue with me. So 13 books this month. I'm also doing the Devour Your TBR Reading Challenge that's on Goodreads with Destiny, who now has her own booktube channel. This month, for March, we were focusing on Monstrous March, where you're reading monster books. And I didn't think that I had any, but I read a lot of them. Like the Gracie Er, that's got some monsters in it. Some more like political and social monsters. Shutter Island is more demons of society and your own inner demons. and exploring a psych ward. In an Absent Dream, like the Wayward Children series is definitely kind of like an inner demons thing, or a demon of your doors. Slay, which was again like social and political demons. Us Against You, the whole town is a demon. My Dark Vanessa, My Dark Vanessa and Know My Name both had some monsters in it. Yeah, so I think I actually did that pretty well. Next up, I'm gonna go over my personal stats really quickly. I'm trying to keep a little better track of what countries I'm reading from this year. So I have this little corkboard map that I got at Hobby Lobby. I forgot to show this for February, but I showed it for my January wrap up. This is small enough that I can't really point out individual countries, but I do have some rhinestone pins left over from my wedding that I put in each of the countries that I've read from. Eventually I want to be able to do an awesome computer graphic, but I'm not quite that advanced in my technology yet. So I read 13 books this month, and that was 8 physical books, 2 ebooks, and 3 audiobooks. I had 1 buddy read that I finished, which actually really quickly I'll talk about my DNFs. I DNF'd The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. I was buddy reading this with Kara Kipland and Nicole from A Beautiful Chaos of Books. I quit 150 pages into this sucker. 150 pages! The plot hadn't started yet. I was more concerned with the side stories than the main story. My favorite character was barely even in the book at that point. And when I checked in with Kara and Nicole towards the end of the month, they both said that they really hated it. So I'm glad I put it down when I did. And the other book that I DNF'd was Saturday by Ian McEwan. I was 100 pages into this and I really enjoyed the writing, but the plot wasn't really going anywhere. I did go ahead and look up the plot summary. I'm not afraid of spoiling myself for anything. And it's kind of early 2000s American politics and their effect on Britain, which did not interest me at all. So I put it down. I'm sorry to all the people who were excited for me to read that book. It just was not going to work. But those are my DNFs for the month. It's better than last month. Last month, in February, I DNF'd a lot of books. But I only had 2 for March, which was good. Anyways, I read 8 books from American authors. 1 from France, 2 from Canada, 1 from Sweden, and 1 from Ireland. I read 5 library books and 8 from my owned TBR. 1 nonfiction and 12 fiction. I have 1 or 2 nonfiction that I want to read for next month. I really want to start pushing harder on my nonfiction, because there's a lot of them that I'm excited for, but I'm just not paying as much attention to them as fiction. And as for authors, I read 10 female authors and 3 male authors this month. Which, like I've said in previous months, I tend to read more female than male authors without even trying. So whenever people have a goal of, I'm going to read more women authors, I'm like, I pretty much read only women authors. I don't think it's that hard. Like, my favorite books I guess my favorite books tend to be written by men. The bulk of my books tend to be written by women. I think that was my point. Next up, I have the Read Some Friggin' Books-a-thon. So I'm doing this with Joshana over at Joshana C. We got a bunch of our friends together and we're encouraging them to read more, and we're making up some nerdy bookish stats about it. I wasn't sure how this was going to turn out because, world ending and everything, but everyone still did pretty well. I think my mother was the only one of my participants who did not finish a book this month. Which, it's fine, she's a home health nurse, so she's got her own stuff going on. But still good for her because I think she started 2 books this month. Love you, Mom. So I had 7 participants this month. They finished 17 books, and 8 books are still being read at this time. So for the 8 books that are currently being read, 75% of them are being enjoyed. And 12.5%, they're like, I'm kind of liking it. 12.5% are no. I'd be interested to see if they're finishing it. I know at least one person isn't finishing the book that she started. As for those who have finished their books, a little over 50% enjoyed them, and a little less than 50% are completely obsessed with what they've been reading. We've had some really good stats for the Read Some Friggin' Books-a-thon. I am so proud of my friends and all of the books that they're reading and all of the books that they're enjoying, so go you. I love getting your nerdy stats. I love talking about the nerdy stats. And I hope Shoshana's side of the readathon is going as well as mine. One of my participants actually went ahead and downloaded the links that we had, which I'll put my Read Some Friggin' Books-a-thon video up in the corner, and she is doing her own Read Some Friggin' Books-a-thon. So she's participating in my readathon, and then she has other people participating in hers. It's really cool and nerdy. But that is it for March. I think I've rambled on long enough at this point. I'm tired. I got off work. My voice is dying. And yes, please survive. Stay inside. Social distance. I love you all. Please like, subscribe, be my friend on social media because we can't have any physical friends right now. And I usually try to post every Wednesday, Sunday. So I will see all of you in my next video. Bye, friends.